Hello everyone, welcome to Foreign University Self-Learning courses. This is Sherry again, and I'm happy to be moving on a segment of work-related topics. This time I'll be focusing a little bit on the business etiquettes, especially digitally speaking, although some of those applies with in-person business settings as well. The information I'll be drawing on will be coming mainly from these two sources, to which I'll read the titles out loud. One is 10 Rules of Professional Etiquettes for the Digital Workplace. And again, given that for the purpose of this video and the timing we have, I will only select a very few to do a quick overview and would be including the references for you to check it out after watching the video. The other article I'm drawing it it's from a popular business magazine online called Inc. And the article is titled Business Etiquette, 5 Rules That Matter Now. This is an article written by Eliza Browning, the vice president of a company making stationery. So both of them focus on different aspects of business etiquettes, but because there are some overlap in digital and in-person business dealings, I find it to be relevant to share those, hopefully as a good reminders if you already know about those, or as new learning for you to apply not only in the future work scenarios, but that can be applied right away as you are in your academic pursuits. One of the most important business etiquettes is being on time. Now, that's something we all know, but the trickier thing is, in the digital setting, here the author says, early is on time, and on time already means late. Punctuality is the golden rule. So the author is really asking us to make sure that we could set up a buffer time of at least 10 minutes before the scheduled start time of every meeting, so that we will not be violating anyone else's timeline with our own technical difficulties. This is particularly interesting to be aware of. Even when we are setting up in-person meetings, we do want to make sure that we can arrive at least 5 minutes on time so that we don't appear that we're too rushed, have our paperwork disorganized, and perhaps, need a final just touch up on our makeup if that comes down to that. When it comes to the digital setting, then our struggles are mostly with making sure the technological aspects of it are taken care of so that we will not appear rushed and eat up the time of other conference participants, for example, and end up having to wait for us. Moving on to the next key thing. Here, put yourself in their shoes. I will be reading off the first paragraph. You may disagree with how another person handles a specific situation, but rise above and recognize that everyone is trying their best. It's not your duty to judge others based on what you feel is right. You are only responsible for yourself. In this particular etiquette, the author is really trying to give us a reminder that there are times we are bound to disagree with each other, especially when we come together and we have meetings and we are having different strategies or ideas on how we could address a problem in the company. So it is particularly important that as we voice our disagreements, because it's important to also do that, we could also be mindful on how we voice our disagreements, and instead of judging others or criticizing others, we could be more mindful about how we are expressing the differences and to work towards a more constructive solution for all. Here reads the second paragraph. The digital landscape has made it even more difficult to know whether or not you're crossing a line, but I think it's simple. Etiquette is positive. It's a way of being, not a set of rules of do's and don'ts. So here the author is really trying to set the tone that when we're having the etiquettes, when we're trying to be polite and thoughtful of others, especially when it comes to business dealings, whether in person or digitally speaking, our attitudes matter on how we come across and how we want to say things. And so I particularly like how she has this approach where etiquette is positive and it is a way of being, not dictating the rules of it, such and such should be done only A and B and C. But it's a bit more flexible, and so that we could learn to observe and pay more attention to the context in which we're dealing businesses with. Now, the next one, focus on the face, not on the screen. This is particularly relevant when you are doing the in-person business dealings during meetings, conferences, presentations. But I think in digital spacing, it is sometimes more important to be mindful of that, because most of the time you are having to deal with a small screen and trying to make the digital conference work with each other. So it becomes that much more easier to be distracted by the email notifications, by the other web pages that are open before the conferences. And so you may look like you are there in person, but your mind is likely already just distracted. And so I think that with this reminder, it is not just about focusing on being able to have some eye contact with the other person, but also to have a mindful presence of where you put your thoughts and your attention in. Now, being specific. This one, I think, would be quite interesting and could be challenging for the ESL learners. In general, using English, there is a habit of being more straightforward, more direct in how things are spoken and expressed. And that is especially true when it comes to requests. Surely, your tone could still be polite, but in the English language, the habit of being direct is a lot more obvious than, say, in some of the Asian languages, where the culture of some of the Asian languages emphasize more on being a bit more subtle, less direct in how you express yourself. But sometimes, because of that cultural context, it could create confusion, especially as we attempt to make requests in English. And so I think that this could be a good reminder. I'll read off from the slide here. Never leave anything up to chance or personal interpretation. So again, that goes back to sometimes by making the way we write, if we're less direct, less specific, there can be a myriad of ways of interpreting a sentence or a few phrases, and so that becomes very confusing in the business dealing and takes up everybody's time. Now, the three other points that the author brought up in here are: keep everything simple and to the point. More words means more confusion. I imagine this may have happened to some of you, especially if the email or the paragraphs comes to be really long. So you see a lot of words, but sometimes you're not entirely sure what's the real point being expressed in there. The second point is force yourself to state your request and urgent details clearly in the first paragraph. I would say this is really the art of writing an effective email, business email especially, in a way where you could also balance the tone for being polite and still express yourself clearly so that it would be efficient and it is clearly stated. The final point here is be polite and just spit it out. Ensure that your message makes one request and one request alone. The reason why the author is making one request alone is sometimes when we write 2 or 3 or even 4 paragraphs in the email, that could easily turn into 2 or 3 or even 4 requests, making it overwhelming for the receiver or reader of the email. And it is not likely to be conducive to a more efficient business dealing. So by keeping in mind that keeping the email to the point and clearly state the email, the request in the first paragraph with only one request, that's probably a more thoughtful way of and one of the etiquettes when it comes to using email for communications. Now, here's the final point. Both of the authors have mentioned that while doing business dealings digitally and in person, the thank you and the importance of sending thank you notes after the job interviews. And so this is making your cards having a more personalized touch, say by doing a handwritten note instead of emailing. And then for the author who was focusing on the digital aspect of it, emphasize that you want to do it in a timely manner, which means you would like to send that note within 24 hours of your job interview. This is so that it would be relevant. It would demonstrate that you're diligent, even in being careful and thoughtful around such matters of it is people relationship, after all, that we're dealing with. And so this is what both of the authors are emphasizing when it comes to that. Now, here are the two links, as I've mentioned, that have a lot more information for your references after watching the video. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I would welcome your comments or thoughts for the future segments. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.